Hello and welcome to The Top Story, the podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Xizhi. Coming up in this edition, Israel has ordered an immediate halt to Gaza's electricity supply in an effort to pressure Hamas into releasing hostages. The interim president of Syria has warned that he will hold perpetrators responsible for the recent deadly violence in the country. And hundreds of thousands of people are without power in eastern Australia as a tropical depression brought damaging winds and heavy rains. We begin in the Middle East. Israel has ordered an immediate halt to Gaza's electricity supply in an effort to pressure Hamas into releasing hostages. This comes even as the country prepared to send a delegation to Doha for further talks on the next phase of the ceasefire deal. Hamas has described the electricity cut as blackmail. The power cut followed Israel's move to block all aid supplies to Gaza, including food. The initial phase of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas ended on March the 1st. The Palestinian group has repeatedly called for an immediate start to negotiations for a future deal aiming to end the conflict permanently. The Jewish state says it prefers extending Phase 1 until mid-April and halted aid to Gaza over the impasse. Meanwhile, Egypt's plan for the reconstruction of Gaza is gaining increasing support. Cairo has proposed the full development of Gaza while protecting more than 2 million people from forced migration. Despite Israeli and US objections, Egypt is pushing for an international conference to be held within the next few weeks. Abdel Al-Marouki reports from Cairo.
After being endorsed by the 22 Arab nations on Tuesday for its vision to reconstruct Gaza, Egypt has been rallying international support. On Friday, it received wider backing for its plan during an extraordinary foreign ministers' meeting between the 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation held in Saudi Arabia. The next day, Britain, France, Germany and Italy collectively said that the plan shows, quote, a realistic path to the reconstruction of Gaza.
The speech of the President of the European Council at the Arab Summit clearly showed the strength of support this plan has from the European countries. Countries like Spain and Ireland earlier showed support. I don't think any country in the world would object to the Egyptian plan except the United States and Israel. Rallying international backing for the plan can put pressure on the US to accept it in the end and make the plan implementable.
Based on reports issued by UN bodies and the World Bank's IRDNA, Egypt created a $53 billion plan to completely rebuild Gaza by 2030. But Cairo's plan challenges US President Donald Trump, who suggested all Palestinians be forced out of Gaza. According to Egypt, 460,000 permanent houses will be built to accommodate some 2.7 million people. The Egyptian vision aspires to build 2 seaports and an airport to end Israel's siege of Gaza.
The plan is negotiable and subject to further development, which I believe is the reason behind its success. In the end, everyone wants a practical and implementable plan. It's also a political, economic and security plan that engages with all issues in Gaza. A two-state solution is part of it, and reaching peace with Israel is essential for the plan. It's a realistic plan. That's why it is getting a lot of international support.
Egypt is addressing issues such as reclaiming agricultural land, nearly 70% of which has been destroyed by Israel's unprecedented bombing campaign. It also wants the Palestinian Authority, as an internationally recognized body, to cover Gaza instead of Hamas. Cairo is using its decades of experience in clearing unexploded World War II ordnance, as well as its recent experience in developing dozens of new cities, to do the same in Gaza.
That was Abdel Al-Marouki in Cairo. Staying on the Middle East, the United States and Russia have called for a UN Security Council meeting over escalating violence in Syria. The interim president of Syria has warned that he will hold perpetrators responsible for the recent deadly violence. A UK-based monitor says intense clashes between government security forces and loyalists of ousted President Bashar al-Assad have killed over 1,000 people in recent days. Mihail Barnavit reports.
On Sunday, Syrian security forces continued operations in coastal towns where fighting has raged since Thursday between ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad loyalists and government forces. Heavily armed security officers patrol the streets of Jable, moving in military vehicles and tanks as clashes intensified over the weekend.
They set vehicles on fire, burned cars, killed our men, and surrounded our forces in the area. They even besieged our group inside the hospital. But praise be to God, the Ministry of Defense lifted the siege.
As security forces pursued armed groups in Latakia and Jable, they also worked to restore stability and end insurgent attacks on utilities.
After days of pursuing the remnants, security has stabilized here in the Latakia region to a large extent. We would like to reassure our people on the Syrian coast, especially in Latakia, that God willing, we are here to protect you, we are here for you.
Armed supporters of Syria's new leadership launched operations to track down looters, making several arrests in Tartus province. After days of intense violence, including reports of execution-style killings, the Syrian president announced the formation of an independent national commission to investigate killings committed against civilians and attacks on public institutions and the military.
That was Michal Bardavid on the recent deadly violence in Syria. Moving on to Europe. Russian forces have recaptured 3 more settlements in its western Kursk region 7 months after Ukraine's cross-border offensive. This came as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reaffirmed his confidence in having a constructive dialogue with US representatives on ending the conflict. US and Ukrainian officials are due to meet in Saudi Arabia's second-largest city of Jeddah on Tuesday. Ross Cullen reports from Kyiv.
Volodymyr Zelensky is going to be in Saudi Arabia for one-on-one conversations with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He's going to be travelling with a delegation, and then that delegation will continue on to the Tuesday talks with the United States. Now, this is not going to be attended by Volodymyr Zelensky, so it's not a presidential level meeting, but it is pretty much the same level as we did see in February. Also, in Saudi Arabia, when representatives from Washington and Moscow met each other. Now, this time around, it's going to be the Ukrainian delegation with the Foreign Secretary, Andriy Sybiha, the Defense Minister, Rustem Umerov, the President's Chief of Staff, the President's Deputy Chief of Staff are going to be the main focal point in terms of what Ukraine is going to be bringing to the table in terms of personnel. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and Stephen Witkoff, the Middle East envoy, will be the key players for the United States delegation. That is going to be the key focus this week in terms of the talks. Ukraine proposing a possible truce, a possible ceasefire, the conditions it would like to see fulfilled to bring peace to the people of this nation. But also the United States will be interested to see if there are any concessions that Kyiv might be willing to make. And of course, they will want to discuss that minerals deal, which is still a possibility. It was not signed during that disastrous news conference 9 days ago in the White House, but the US will be interested to see if they can make any progress on conversations around that.
That is Ross Cullen in Kyiv. In Asia, China's top political advisory body has concluded its annual session in Beijing. President Xi Jinping and other leaders attended the closing event. National Committee Chairman Wang Huning of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference delivered a speech. In the past week, over 2,000 national political advisors discussed key topics on China's development. Delegates approved a series of documents at the meeting. Zheng Songwu reports.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and other state leaders attended the closing meeting of the third session of the 14th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. The resolution on the work report of the CPPCC Standing Committee, the report on reviewing of proposals at the third session of the 14th CPPCC National Committee, and the political resolution on the third session of the 14th CPPCC National Committee were approved at the closing ceremony. Wang Huning, chairman of the 14th CPPCC National Committee, delivered a speech.
We must fulfill our duties by focusing on Chinese modernization. Facilitating Chinese modernization is the main focus of our work. Wherever the central tasks of the party and the state are, that is where we will rally the support of the people, build greater consensus, and pool wisdom and strength.
The deputies shared their thoughts on the week-long event.
The third session of the 14th CPPCC National Committee closes today. I'm excited and I will convey the spirit of the two sessions to people in my hometown.
I will share what I have thought and learned with my team and people in my hometown as well. I have a more clear plan to promote intangible culture and contribute to rural education.
The third session of the 14th CPPCC National Committee has concluded, and every year in March, members come to Beijing with their proposals related to people's livelihood. And this event now not only has been a platform for the Chinese people to know China's policies well, but also for the world to get to know China well.
That was Zheng Songwu reporting. Now turning to Oceania. Hundreds of thousands of people are without power in Australia as a tropical depression brought damaging winds and heavy rains. Tropical cyclone Alfred was downgraded to a tropical low before hitting the east coast on Saturday. Flood warnings were issued along 400 kilometres of coast in southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. Michael Voss reports.
Residents of southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales spent Sunday assessing the damage and making a start of clearing up the debris. Cyclone Alfred had weakened to a tropical depression before it came ashore on Saturday, but still caused widespread flooding, uprooting trees and taking down power lines.
We were sleeping in the hallway to try and stay out of any danger. And it wasn't the most comfortable night's sleep, but we're just glad to be able to still be here, and we won't hurt, so it's all good.
The next morning, Brett saw the havoc the storm had wreaked outside.
Yeah, she fell right on top of the power line. It's just touching it. Really hoping that the tree stays where it is and doesn't fall any further.
Around 300,000 homes remain without electricity. The eye of the storm has moved inland away from the coast, but according to Australia's Prime Minister, the crisis is far from over.
So the situation in Queensland and northern New South Wales remains very serious due to flash flooding and heavy winds. Heavy rainfall, damaging wind gusts and coastal surf impacts are expected to continue over coming days. I urge everyone to continue to listen carefully to the emergency authorities.
I want to make it clear that we're not out of the woods yet. We're watching very closely the river systems in the northern rivers. There's still a lot of rain out there. There's still a lot of full rivers, swollen rivers.
One person is known to have died after the police recovered the body of a 61-year-old man who went missing after his car was caught in the floodwater. In a separate incident, 12 soldiers were injured after their convoy crashed on the way to help with the rescue mission. It's too early to assess the full extent of the damage, but authorities fear the cost could run into billions of dollars.
That was Michael Voss on Tropical Cyclone Alfred's impact on Australia. Finally, in South America, indigenous societies have lived in the Amazon for thousands of years, but their stories remain concealed beneath the vast rainforest. Scientists are now using the LiDAR imaging technology to uncover ancient civilizations, many of which employed sustainable ways to coexist with the region's lush nature. Lucrecia Franco reports on the discovery.
The world's largest rainforest, the Amazon, spanning 6.7 million square kilometers, nearly 60% of it located in Brazil. Now using LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology, researchers are uncovering traces of long-lost civilizations. Beaming out 1 million penetrating laser pulses per second, the apparatus creates three-dimensional maps, revealing earthwork patterns previously seen only in deforested areas. And it's here at Brazil's National Institute for Space Research that a team of investigators sifted through LiDAR data and came to a most remarkable conclusion about just how densely populated the Amazon was.
Very close to Amazonia.
Geographer Vinicius Peripato has been leading the project for the past 8 years.
We are currently discovering that the Amazonia is not so pristine as people think. It can be much more human modified than we thought, because we are discovering these huge ancient societies that were living beneath the forest.
While on-site verification is pending, the findings suggest at least 10,000 large, sophisticated pre-Columbian earthworks lie hidden on the forest floor. And there may be many more than that.
They were such an organized group that they had a specific location to deposit the waste, and all this organic material concentrated in a specific place, they became what they call terra preta, which is much more fertile due to the organic composition.
It is a striking discovery, and Peripato says that the black earth terra preta could be one of the main reasons the Amazon rainforest continues to sequester carbon.
We are currently developing this hypothesis to analyze even the soil that could store more carbon than ordinary one, and also the forest itself, because you have much more shrubs, much more subsoil that can lead to more carbon stored.
It is an example of how indigenous peoples shape the forest with advanced planning and sustainable ecological practices that inadvertently could be helping to mitigate global warming today.
That was Lucretia Franco reporting. Now, recapping the headlines before we go, Israel has ordered an immediate halt to Gaza's electricity supply in an effort to pressure Hamas into releasing hostages. The interim president of Syria has warned that he will hold perpetrators responsible for the recent deadly violence in the country. And hundreds of thousands of people are without power in eastern Australia as a tropical depression brought damaging winds and heavy rains. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I am Xi Zhi. Thank you for listening.